Hello and welcome to Beyond Business. This is the show where we look at the latest trends in the global economy. Today, we're turning the spotlight on credit ratings agencies. Are they safeguarding the world's financial system, or are they a threat to it? Only years ago, few outside financial circles paid much attention to Standard & Poor's, Moody's and Fitch. But these days, the world's main ratings agencies attract headlines on an almost daily basis. They've been accused of failing to raise the alarm ahead of the subprime mortgage crisis, and some say they've worsened the Eurozone's debt woes. Not strange, then, that politicians, specifically here in Europe, are keeping a watchful eye.
The EU Commissioner for the EU Single Market, Michel Barnier, put credit ratings agencies on alert last November. He is determined to downgrade them. The agencies will face stricter rules.
The main measure is to reduce dependence on agency rankings in all EU legislation related to banks, insurance companies and market institutions.
Barnier is urging investors to detox on their own initiative using their own criteria. He wants closer scrutiny on how the agencies reach their findings. The aim is to avoid another subprime fiasco. Agencies such as Standard & Poor's gave a AAA to toxic assets. The new enforcement agency on the block is the ESMA, the European Securities and Markets Authority, set up last year and based in Paris. It gives rating agencies authorization to work in the EU and monitors the rigor and probity of their analysts.
There were a number of issues where the credit rating agencies fundamentally changed their approach, some of the policies that they followed and some of the governance mechanisms. We are now doing some follow-up to make sure that those policies have been properly embedded and implemented. We are also looking more broadly at how they conduct their business, and obviously we do that through a combination of on-site visits, inspections, but at the same time also getting data from them about their ratings and the changes and analysing that.
12 ESMA staff members carry out inspections at ratings agency offices. The authority has the right to scrap their licence if there's an infraction and can issue fines of up to 750,000 euros.
All right, for more now on the ratings agencies, I'm joined by Frédéric Drevant. He's Director for Europe at the credit rater Moody's. Welcome to France 24 and welcome to Beyond Business.
Thank you for receiving me.
Now, do you think that ratings agencies in the past few years, have they attracted unfair attention?
Well, our role has been certainly much more visible in the past few years as the Eurozone entered into a very severe crisis, and we understand that there is a greater interest in all the market participants that operate in that field. But in fact, the majority of the work we do is really focused in a completely different field towards the real economy. And that is really by assigning ratings to companies, to banks. And we do that really by analyzing their credit quality, their ability to repay their debt, and we make that information available to investors globally. And they use this information in their own decisions about how they may want to invest as an input, really. So it's ultimately a very useful service, but certainly it has raised questions in the Eurozone context.
As you say, it's raised a lot of questions. Are you listening to the criticism? Have you changed your ways then, for instance, since the subprime mortgage crisis, which you were so criticized for?
Yes, of course. We have certainly taken into account the fact that we had to learn from the lessons from that period of time. And we have taken a number of initiatives, both in terms of trying to improve the quality of the work we do, the governance of the firm, the quality of the information we provide also to the market, trying to explain our ratings, to explain our rationale, with really an objective of providing better quality ratings. And all of that in the context of a new series of regulations, both in Europe and in the US.
What do you make of the political efforts then to regulate your business? What do you make, for instance, of the European Securities and Markets Authority?
Well, the idea of having a European regulatory body is an extremely good idea because the work we do is a work which has global reach. We work with investors who may be in Singapore, in China, in Hong Kong. They may be interested in a French company, in a Spanish company. and therefore trying to bring the supervision of our work to a regional level in the case of ESMA, who's the supervisor for the Eurozone, or even considering this at a more global level is a very good initiative.
But many would probably be surprised that you, as a credit rater yourself, say that yes, we need regulation, we need that supervision.
Well, you have to understand that we play a role which is viewed by many as very important in the well-functioning of the capital markets. We therefore understand that there is a good reason for wanting supervision of the work we do.
So you recognize that perhaps you've lost a little bit of trust in the past few years?
No, we recognize that we play such a central role and that being regulated is a natural thing for an industry as important as our own industry. And in fact, we are already regulated. Europe created a first round of regulation in 2009. And in fact, we were registered by ESMA only a few months ago. This was a very complete set of regulation which looked at ratings quality, governance of rating agencies, how they communicate and disclose information to the market, a number of themes which are very good for the market and good for investors who rely on our ratings.
All right, we're going to continue this discussion in just a moment, but first though, we're going to look at how competition is stiffening for Standard & Poor's, Moody's and Fitch. In China, Dagong Ratings wants to challenge the so-called Big Three. It became famous for downgrading the United States' credit rating before Standard & Poor's, and last December, it also downgraded France's debt. Dagong says it aims to provide a different view, but some suspect it's the voice of the Chinese government.
This private company is the only Chinese rating agency without a foreign partner. It says it's independent and ready to challenge Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch altogether.
The fatal mistake of those three big companies is that they based their sovereign debt ratings on ideology and politics. On the contrary, at Dagong, we emphasize the capacity of the states to create wealth, on how much they can spend according to what they earn, and not how much they spend according to what they can borrow.
Dagong expanded its rating services in 2011. Until then, the agency rated only Chinese companies. Now it has 400 employees and 12 million euros in annual revenue. Dagong rates 68 countries and gives China a much higher rating than the United States. And that's only the beginning.
We are setting up a representative office in Europe. We already have one in Hong Kong, and of course we'll set up new offices according to the needs of the states and provinces around the world.
The agency is not very open about its ratings methods and says they do not differ from the other agencies. But that's not easily verified, and the American Financial Regulatory Authority has refused to recognize Dagong's ratings.
You cannot deny that Dagong is still far behind the three big ratings agencies. But in the near future, while it's gaining more and more credibility, Dagong will have a respected voice in the global industry.
Before that can happen, Dagong will need to convince the world it is impartial and transparent.
Okay, we're back here in the studio with Frédéric Drevant from Moody's. Now, do you feel under threat from the likes of Dagong? We have several other examples from around the world. We've got Egan-Jones in the United States. We have DBRS from Canada, and also Roland Berger has said it's aiming to start up a ratings agency in Germany. As I say, do you feel under threat here?
I think it's in fact the opposite. We see the work we do as one where we have to analyze not only existing information, existing data, but also try to look at the future. We have to look at future events. What is the likelihood that a company may lose market share? What is the likelihood that it may lose revenue? And those are difficult analysis because you're again trying to make an assessment of something which will happen in the future. We do it with a lot of precision, but it's not a perfect science. And on that basis, the idea that you will have different rating agency coming up with different opinions is in fact a very good thing for the marketplace. We should be in fact promoting the concept of diversity of opinions as opposed to something where we would be moving more towards a single view of the world.
Speaking of diversity, now there's been a lot of criticism that the main three ratings agencies, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, which you represent, as well as Fitch, they're all based in the United States. In Europe, for instance, there's been some reticence when it comes to that. What do you say to that?
Well, we are, first of all, an international firm. We're present in Europe for many, many years. We have hundreds of analysts based in Europe. The work we do is really one where we're trying to give indications of credit risk, assessments of credit risk to investors based all around the world. And the benefit they see is really the ability we have in providing opinions which can be benchmarked, compared on a global basis. So we don't really view ourselves as being US, European. We really view ourselves as being an international firm.
Now, a lot of European politicians and even the head of the European Central Bank, Mario Draghi, they've said that maybe we shouldn't care so much about what the credit ratings agencies say. Do you still feel that you are relevant?
Well, ultimately, investors have to decide if it's useful for them to rely on rating agencies. All the feedback we receive is that the quality of the work we do is a useful input to any decisions that an investor will make. Investors are going to look at the track record we have. They will look at the quality of the work we do, the research we provide, and they will make an assessment based on all of that information, but also the regulatory environment we operate in, and determine, yes, can I rely on this rating agency? Is it a useful input to the work I have to do?
So you're not too concerned about your customers heeding those calls from Mario Draghi?
Well, as far as we can tell, investors continue to strongly use, in fact, the ratings we provide. They use it still as a very useful input to their day-to-day work. We believe that we have the tools, the experience, the background, but also the methodologies to provide something which remains very useful for investors across the globe.
All right, there's been a lot of controversy when it comes to your sector of the market. Thanks very much indeed, Frédéric Drevant, for coming in to us and for answering our questions. Frédéric Drevant there from Moody's. And with that, we're going to wrap up Beyond Business. Thanks for watching.